What the hell, man? Merry Christmas? That's it? No memes? No reference to Mama's family? Not even a fart joke about your cat? I'll tell you what, this channel's getting pretty low effort, mind. How about I just min-max you and unsubscribe?
What's up, everyone? You got Mind Circus here with you, and welcome to another Mind Over Meta open world story solo build. And today we are going to be taking a revisit to Condi Renegade. Before we get started, I do want to take a couple of seconds and just wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Winter's Day, whatever it is you feel that you may need to kind of celebrate during this winter solstice. Just want to wish you and yours the best here during this holiday season, no matter what it is you favor as your celebration of choice. And with that out of the way, hey, let's get into Condi Renegade a little bit here. There was a bit of a story behind this build. I'm not going to get too far into it. Mainly involved me forcing Catty Wampus to change her character build and gear about 4 times and then return the gear that she was passing around between these characters to the original tune with a build that was about 2 traits different than what she was originally running. And really that was kind of where this all came from. I'm obviously not a stranger to Condi Renegade. I play a fair bit of Condi Renegade, and I've generally been playing it in Viper's gear. I know Trailblazer is also another good way to go with it. But necessity being the mother of invention, Catty Wampus and I were testing a few things one night in an effort for us to come up with better and more efficient ways of two-manning fractals, which is something we do in our spare time a little bit. And this is really what came out of it, just kind of looking for the best two-man comp. And the build that came out of that kind of discussion, functionally not too much different than the other Condi Renegade build that I already have up on the channel, but I find this one to be objectively better. This is really the way I believe it should be run here at this point. It's got a slightly lower damage cap than Vipers or Trailblazers, but what it does bring to the party is just so much more than either of those variants that I just don't think that there's a compelling reason to choose them over this Celestial version. The other thing I'll just address before we go on is, hey, why am I putting another Condi Shortbow Renegade build up on the channel? I thought about this a fair bit, and, you know, I thought about what was I going to do with the original build, which has actually been one of the more successful builds on my channel. I'm actually going to be taking that build down as soon as this one goes up, and replacing it with this one. I think that this is the absolute best build and gear setup. We'll go through a few things. And, you know, you may be thinking to yourself, well, you know, in Celestial gear, how is it doing, you know, the same amount of damage? You know, the damage cap is a little bit lower, but the other side of it is, it turns out being able to cast all your powers 25% quicker is actually a little bit overpowered. Who thought? At any rate, let's get into the tail of the tape, see how this build did in open world. So basic open world champions, there's not much else to say. This build, Condi Renegade, Condi Shortbow Renegade, absolutely the king of these kind of encounters. It's got everything you need. It's got all the CC you want. It's got all of the damage that you want. It's got more than enough sustain. Talking about sustain, a couple of quick seconds. I believe this build, there are a couple of other builds that approach its level of sustain, but I think this build in this gear setup is probably the highest self-sustaining build that still does, you know, an acceptable level of damage for open world. There's so much life leech on this build that taking out large open world champions is just not a problem at all. This, of course, goes through the hot hero points where it regularly cruises through some of the harder ones. We've got the egg clutch up on the screen. This is a bit of one of the harder ones. I wouldn't say it's like the hardest one or anything, but it's certainly harder than a couple of the others. It's more than a bit of an HP sponge. It's got a massive Condi spike on it. But this build really just has so many sustain options that this is just trivialized here at this point. Not a problem. So let's take it up to the next level where I actually started soloing some fractals on this build, and this is where I have to say that there is no better option than this build for this kind of thing. When it comes to soloing fractals, if that's your kind of thing, if you want to go through and you want to do that, I just don't think there's a better build for it. It's really the king of a few different activities, I'll be honest with that. You know, you should be watching me solo the Flame Effigy event. I also went ahead and soloed my Trin afterwards just to make sure it was legit, and despite everything all along going to crud, I rode the escapement to its end. So heading back into open world, Crucible of Consecration could largely be described as an absolute joke. Again, on this one, I'm feeling the lack of stab at times. The Power Scrapper, probably still the king on this event as far as I'm concerned, but this still does an absolutely fantastic job. If it weren't for the stab issues, this build would probably be the absolute king of this event. It really is the only thing that's missing. And finally, legendary bounties. Yes, all of them, much as you like. No, just do it. Just do it. That's all. Seriously, guys, this build is an absolute beast at these kinds of encounters. So the harder it gets, the better it does. It's going to be everything you need to get through in these. So if you're out there kind of needing that one tune to, you know, solo a bounty or two to finish a collection, etc., this would probably be my weapon of choice for it. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the strengths and weaknesses of this build. So quick little look over the strengths and weaknesses on this one. The number one strength of this build is going to be its sustain. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I talk about this a lot in my videos when we're talking about builds for open world and passive self-sustain. You know, the jury is out on exactly what builds are providing the highest level of self-sustain, but, you know, without any kind of proper measurement in game of this kind of thing, I'm going to give you a little bit of anecdote on this one, and I'm going to say that, you know, this one, I believe Condi Scourge comes close to this one in terms of its, you know, its re-sustain options and its passive sustain via Parasitic Contagion and Epidemic, but that relies on a lot of trash mobs to make it work. Other options that you have in this, you know, just about any Renegade option is going to, or any Revenant option is absolutely going to include the same kind of self-sustain, but in terms of taking it a little bit further, obviously we're going to be using Torment Runes on this one, and we're going to get the bump from the healing factor of the Celestial Gear, which is really going to put this into a whole other stratosphere when it comes to its sustain options. Our number 2 bonus on this one is going to be the damage. It is absolutely fantastic damage. It is not top tier damage. When it comes to top tier open world builds, I'll probably look directly at like a Viper's Condi Scourge or something like that. But in terms of just about everything else, I think this is probably second place in terms of the damage on the open world builds that I put out on the channel. It is huge amounts of Condi damage. It is very easy to put them down, and that will lead us into our third strength of this build, and that would be the simplicity of it. It's pretty easy to play. We'll go over most of this here in the gameplay section. I won't drill this into your heads too long, but I really find that Condi Shortbow Renegade one of the easier builds to play, with a couple of things up its sleeve that we'll get into again during the gameplay section. In terms of the weaknesses on this build, the number 1 and most glaring weakness will be its stun break capability and access to stability. Since we will not be using Jalis, our options for stability are slim to nil. So we're going to be looking at stun breaks. Now, stun breaks on Revenant, I have been pretty clear about it on the past. It's not in the greatest place. I realize that Vindicator is giving us more tools, but you know, it just really isn't what some of the other heavy armor classes have for options in this regard. Number 2 weakness is mobility. Now, mobility probably not the biggest deal in a world without mounts, but it still matters. It still matters. There's a lot of points when you may be stuck in combat or whatever, and you're going to find that that lack of mobility really does start to impact this. Now, Rev has some mobility options. You know, I look at what is it, Call to Anguish. I look at a couple of the weapon skills, but overall speaking, it just doesn't have the kind of zippy zappiness that a few of the other specs may have, and I'm looking specifically at Guardian. Guardian with its teleports, or obviously some of the medium armor classes are a lot more mobile. So it does suffer for that. That said, not hugely, and in a world without mounts, you know, mobility options are not a really huge deal. Finally, I have said it before, I will say it again, this is Celestial. 100% Celestial gear. That makes it expensive if you are looking to onboard into it. I will give the usual caveats about leveraging your options for stat selectable gear and trinkets, and kind of leave it at that. There's not really too much else to say that I haven't said already on this. Go out, get your stat selectable exotic gear. I will link a video in the description down below describing the acquisition of stat selectable armor and the stat selectable trinkets. Should make your life a little bit easier. That said, if you are coming into the game after a long break and boosting a character, you should know that you get celestial armor and trinkets of the exotic variety just by doing your boost. And you know what, that's I think within about 8 or 9% of the ascended numbers, so you may want to take a look at that as well as one of your options if that's what you're looking to kind of get into. So with that out of the way, hey, let's take a few minutes and get into building gear. So building gear on this one, as I mentioned, we will start off with the gear. The gear is 100% celestial gear. All right, so we're using celestial trinkets. Okay, and we are using celestial armor. Okay, we are using a celestial shortbow, and we are using a celestial mace, and we are using a celestial axe. In the armor, we're going to be using tormenting runes. Tormenting runes are the second best option if you are looking to do damage on this one. So let's go over this a little bit because I know that people are going to want options. I am absolutely under the understanding, so to speak, that the tormenting runes are effing expensive, and I agree and understand that. Number one, if you have the ability to get the recipe, get in there and make those runes yourself, you will save a couple of gold on that. If you are looking for another option for the runes, nightmare runes will give you better damage. The Nightmare runes, however, are a little bit hard to get, as they do require a little bit of dungeon grinding, and specifically speaking, you will get those in the Twilight Arbor dungeon with the currency there. So that is another option. You know, if you are looking for an option that is something that you can buy off the TP, I would probably take a look at Renegade runes. Now we'll just take a look at this really quickly here. We will go for upgrade components and search for So we'll see, whoops, Renegade. All right, so our Renegade runes here are a gold 18 apiece. This is pretty cheap for a good rune. These are good runes for a Condi damage dealer. You know, they're not the best option, but they are good. The two best options, I'll go back, are the Torment runes and the Nightmare runes. So let's take a quick little bit at that. The Nightmare runes are an absolute damage dealing one. The Tormenting runes are condition damage plus torment duration, and then recovers a small amount of health after inflicting a foe with torment. Now, since this build actually generates a ton of torment, that is a really, really high value kind of proposition. So that is really it. Those are the three options I would look at. The tormenting runes are absolutely worth it if you're wondering. I would absolutely go ahead and definitely get into at least making them, because they will, you know, save you a couple of gold off the TP. And that really is it. Taking a look at the weapons here at this point, we're going to be running a Sigil of Torment in the mace. We are going to be running a Sigil of Bursting in the axe. Over in the Shortbow, again, we are running a Sigil of Bursting. I mistakenly have a Sigil of Concentration in here, but let me talk a little bit about that further. You would probably want something other than the Sigil of Concentration, but when we get into the gameplay section, I'll tell you why I've got that in there and let you make up your own mind. And really, that is where we are at on that. You'll notice I have some AR in there, and that is just because of the fractals that I was doing. And that, my friends, is our gear. So let's take a look at our build at this point. Our build is nothing kind of out there. It is pretty self-explanatory stuff if you've ever run Condi Shortbow Renegade. Maybe a couple of quick differences on this one, and we will get into it. Devastation. We will be running Unsuspecting Strikes. Deal increased strike damage to foes with health above the health threshold. This is a 20% damage increase when the foes are over 80% health. This is nice. This one here, Siphon Health after using a healing skill, also kind of nice, but I didn't need the sustain off this, so I'm not using this. Going over here into our next line, I'm using Thrill of Combat. This is non-negotiable, okay? Some group scenarios, you may want to take Assassin's Presence, but really, if you are worried about your own sustain for solo purposes, and that's why you're watching this and not, say, a Fractal build or something like that, this is why this trait here you need. And we're going to be running Swift Termination. Deal increased strike damage to foes below the health threshold, so when they are below 50%, we'll be doing another 20% damage. Now, with this one, you could also run Dance of Death here. Dance of Death is going to lose a little bit of DPS, but absolutely bring you back with some sustain. That said, I'll get back to what I said earlier. I didn't need the sustain from that. If, however, I am finding that I'm, struggling with camping red circles or something like that, I'm going to flip over the Dance of Death, which is going to inflict, or is going to give battle scars and therefore some sustain off our vulnerability. Taking a look at Corruption. In Corruption, we're going to be running Acolyte of Torment. Torment deals increased damage, kind of a no-brainer. Over here, Pact of Pain. Conditions you apply to foes last longer, but conditions applied to you also last longer. This is a straight-up damage increase win. Does it hurt a little bit in areas where we are running into some Condi damage? Good examples of this are going to be, some of the later Living World maps. You're going to run into things like Chill, things like Burning. But that said, I'm going to favor this over the options. Okay, so Abyssal Chill, you could also put in here, would give you a little bit more of a win, but I'm still going to go with Pact of Pain on this one. Finally, Diabolic Inferno. This is non-negotiable. Invoke Torment also applies poison and burning. Invoke Torment is what procs when you jump into Demon Stance. Okay. Let's go over here now and take a look at Renegade. Under Renegade, Fury increases the duration of bleeds you inflict. Gaining Fury inspires you with Callous Fervor. Going over here, we're going to be using Heart Piercer. Shortbow skills now pierce. Bleeding you inflict deals more damage. Again, these are just DPS increases. And finally, we are going to be using Righteous Rebel. One of the reasons that we're using Celestial Gear is for the concentration stat. This will all feed back into everything when I get into the gameplay section. I will just say that Alacrity is worth doubling down on and permaing if you can. I highly recommend you get as close to perma on Alacrity as possible. Because it really does make that much of a difference. Specifically on this build, where we are taking away so much damage from the gear, because we're moving from, say, a Trailblazers or a Vipers over to a Celestial. How are we getting that back? Well, we're getting all that back with Alacrity. And we'll go over that again in the gameplay section. But that, my friends, is building gear. And with all that said, hey, let's take a minute and look at fashion. So, not gonna lie, guys, my fashion is an outfit. Don't judge me. Not only is it an outfit, I've used on one of my other characters, on one of my other build videos, but I put it on this one, and then I put the Shortbow on, and I was so happy with the way that looked that I just kind of had to leave it that way. Let's get into it here. The outfit in question, let's take a look here, okay, is the Shrine Guardian outfit. I'm pretty happy with that. Other things to keep in mind with this is I am using, I believe, the Tengu Echo Shortbow on that, which I believe really kind of mixes nicely with that. So let's just kind of take a look. Really kind of happy with the way that looks. And with the weapons, we'll go over to the weapons here at this point. I'm using the Flanged Mace of the Scion. So the Flanged Mace of the Scion, or the Scion weapons, are the ones you actually get in Dragonfall. If you've never done Dragonfall, you are actually guaranteed after a set number of chests, and I think it's something completely outrageous, like 1,000 or something like that. But after a set number of chests in the champ train at the end, you are guaranteed to get a weapon chest, which has one of these skins, which are the standard Ascended ones, but with a bit of a particle effect on that, and I really quite like that weapon. That is just beautiful and works really well. And in the other hand, well, that would be Astralaria, wouldn't it? It's a beautiful thing. I'm just really happy with the way that all came together. Really quick boo over to the dies. Take a quick look at what we're running here. So with the dies, I am running Glacial Sky, I'm running Celestial, I'm running Powder Blue, and I'm running Matriarch Brass. With things like the Celestial die, I will just caution you not to head on over to the TP and buy the brightest possible white you possibly can, because you know what, eventually you're going to get these things from birthday presents anyway. So if you're kind of a long-term player of this game, keep that in mind before you start going ahead and dumping a whole bunch of money into dies. And really, that, my friends, is it. This is War Master Newts. This is how she looks, and she is most ready to head on over to the raid lobby and take a look at how this all comes together. So let's get into it. Alright, you guys, let's take a few minutes and get into the gameplay on this one. The first thing I'll do is a little bit of housekeeping and take a moment to talk about what I have been alluding to all along, and that is about Alacrity. If you already know about Alacrity, I'm going to just caution you to move ahead a little bit in the video, or probably end it right now, because you probably just know what you need to do. But really specifically speaking, let's take a look at the buff and how we are going to generate it and why I have made a couple of the choices I have made. Alacrity, and we will come and bring this up here. I will hit this. Mouse it over. Skills recharge faster. It actually means that our skills come back 25% faster. Turns out that's a pretty powerful buff. Not only that, but we are going to be giving it to a large number of people. We will be giving it to 10 people around us, and we can tell those people because they will be inside the white circle that comes up when I cast that. 10 people in there are going to get that alacrity. Now, let's take a look at the green numbers here. The green numbers mean that we are currently being impacted by alacrity. Let's take a look at our alacrity uptime. If you see there at that point, at about the 3 and some change mark, we lose our alacrity at that point. If I go into my Shortbow and I try this again, we'll have a little bit longer because, as you may remember, during the equipment section, I was running a Sigil of Concentration, which is a 10% bump in your boon duration. So we'll watch this tick down here at this point, 3. So at about the 2.5 second mark, we are okay. Where are we going to get the rest of this? Well, you know, living with a 1.5 or 2 second gap in our alacrity is not a world-ending situation. That said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look to food, and the food that I'm going to look for, okay, is I'm going to look at Master Maintenance Oil as my utility, and I'm going to use chocolate Om-Nom berry creams, which are going to give me plus 100 concentration and plus 40% magic find. Now, there are a lot of ascended foods that give us better buffs than this. This is our cheapest option for the 100% concentration. We can also go ahead in here and get 100 concentration and 70 power from soul pastries. Now, soul pastries are cheap like candy because they are actually candy. They're a Halloween candy, and I highly recommend that if you are in a character that is struggling for concentration, you go buy yourself a stack of this for about 30 silver off the TP, and you've got concentration for days. So let's try with the soul pastry. We've got the utility on here giving us our concentration. When we come in here now and we click this off, let's take a look at how many seconds of downtime we're going to have in here, and I believe it's about a second and a half. We'll take a look here in a moment. Almost done. 3, 2, 1. So there, probably about a second. Where am I going to get the last second of this from? If it's killing me, I'm going to go into the fractal lobby and I'm going to take a look at mystic infusions. The infusions with concentration will probably take it there, though I haven't tested it. I think they might even overcap it a little bit if we put full concentration infusions on there. That said, you know, this is a cost that I'm not going to undertake. This is a level of hardcoreness that I just choose not to get into. I'm really okay with a 1 second alacrity downtime. The people that I'm playing with generally are as well, because we're just in open world. If you are going to be going ahead and fulfilling a more important role in a group scenario, I cannot stress to you enough, this is not the build to use. Okay, so if you're going to be, you know, try-harding fractals, if you're going to be raiding, this is not the Alacrity Renegade you want to use. All right. So with that said, let's get into a little bit more gameplay. Your number one goal here on this build is to be hitting F4 off cooldown. So getting that alacrity, spreading that alacrity out, keeping that alacrity up, that is your number one goal at all times. Everything else should come after hitting that power off cooldown. All right, fair enough. We're good to go. Now, in terms of doing actual damage on this, it's a pretty simple kit. We'll start here with Mace Axe. The Mace skills are okay. They are not great, they're not awful. You do, however, get a really, really nice little combo field off this one. So if we put the 2 down and then the 3, Got ourselves some area might there. That's a good might generator on a build that doesn't generate a ton of might on its own, so we might want to keep that in mind. In terms of the axe skills, the axe 4 is a really, really nice gap closer. We can just hit that, and there's our gap closed. And our 5 is CC. We'll get into that when we go into the CC section. Going over into Shortbow, okay, we've got our auto attack. Our auto attack is a very decent auto attack. You really can't complain about this auto attack. We've got more damage coming off the 2. All right, and that's nice. A little bit more Condis. But your real big win in terms of damage will be from 7-shot. Now, 7-shot pierces. 7-shot does 7 stacks of torment. It's an absolutely fantastic skill, and is the bread and butter of your damage. So keep that in mind, that we want to be hitting 3 off cooldown. The other 2 options here, I mean, you know, you want to be judicious about these, and you want to be more judicious on Revenant than you do on just about any other class because of the energy management issues. So when I'm saying this, what I'm saying is we don't want to fire 4 and 5 off cooldown. We don't want to hit 1, 2, and 3 off cooldown for sure, but we don't want to be burning 4 and 5 off cooldown because of the energy management uses. 4 is an area impact. It's probably not worth the energy against a single target, though it is quite nice and does a fair bit of CC via the slow, so we keep that in mind. And then we get a lot of CC off Scorch Razor. Scorch Razor is an absolutely fantastic power. It's a knockdown on 5 targets for 2 seconds. It's huge CC, and we will get into that during the CC section. Now, when it comes to the actual Renegade skills along the top here, let's take a quick boo into these. Obviously, we're hitting 4 off cooldown. I am hitting, I'm not hitting F3 at all. Just not worth the energy that you are going to use. If you are going to start, you know, hitting powers off cooldown, you're going to run into a whole world of hurt on Renegade. It's just how it works. The F2, however, Heroic Command, works out to be about 12 stacks of might. Let's just make sure about that here. We will hit that, and there's 10 stacks of might. Okay, so that's an instant quick 10 stacks of might. That is 10% damage. That's just not something that we want to mess with. And the way that's set up, that is absolutely perma, so we can hit that off cooldown if we want. That said, it's a pretty big hit to energy, so we do want to make sure that we're being judicious with its use. Taking a look at our utility skills here, we'll start with the demon skills. The demon skills we want to be, again, judicious with. The heal is the heal on the demon stance. It's not bad. Number 2, Call to Anguish here is absolutely good CC bar hate, as well as some Condi applications. So let's go ahead and try that. See, that break bar comes down pretty quick off that skill, so that's no joke there on that one. Banish Enchantment, I am going to recommend you don't use it. Banish Enchantment is a little bit of damage, a little bit of chill, and Boon Rip. You know what? You may run into some situations where Boon Rip is of relevance in open world. Those are few and far between. And finally, Pain Absorption grants resistance to yourself and nearby allies, absorbs conditions from those allies, gaining resolution and additional resistance per condition. I mean, this is for Condi play. You know how I feel about Condi play in open world. It's not always the best thing to double down on, but nice to have if that is the case. With all that said, however, the real magic from Demon Stance is absolutely going to come from Embrace the Darkness. Now, when we hit Embrace the Darkness, we start pulsing conditions around us. Our sweet spot is to make sure that our target is kind of just within the other one end of the circle, and we're standing right about there, and we're just going to let that kind of do its thing. Then when we start doing skills, we'll start burning through that energy quicker, but you see those numbers are going to start to pump really quickly. So that's kind of how that works. So let's get in here into the Renegade portion of it. With the Renegade portion, I'm absolutely going to use 2 or 3 of the spirits. I'm not going to use Razor Claw's Edge. I don't find it worth the energy management costs that much. I'm going to be very, very judicious with my use of Soul Cleave Summit. Soul Cleave Summit, when put down, will grant Life Leech to everybody within its area. So we'll just put that down for the sake of argument so you can see where that is. And there's our area in there. Anybody in there is going to get some life leech. This is a really strong skill, but as you can see, it burns energy like nothing else. So you want to be very judicious with this use. Maybe as a bit of an oh shit button, maybe as to keep the people around you alive a little bit better. Also important to know that your heal, okay, here is a 5-target heal. Alright, so it's going to do a little bit of healing there. It's absolutely a strong sustain option. We'll go over a sustain a little bit in a couple of seconds. We're going to be using Darkrazor's Daring. Now, this gives us some stability. It can be used as a stun break. It's not the most efficient stun break, as it is a targeted AoE. It is, however, daze, and we'll get into that during Break Bar. And Ice Razor's Ire. Ice Razor's Ire gives us vulnerability. Now, if we're using the trait Dance of Death, Ice Razor's Ire is going to be one of the quickest ways to help resustain ourselves. So when I say that, we'll go back into here, into our build, and to just highlight what I was talking about right here. And this is Dance of Death. Applying vulnerability to foes grants stacks of battle scars, which is your sustain. So we can get that off Ice Razor's Ire. That said, as I mentioned earlier, I don't feel that this build really needs the kind of overkill that Dance of Death actually gives us. And we're better going in on a little bit of damage on this one. So, you know, make your choice on that one. If I am running Dance of Death, I am pretty much hitting Ice Razor's Ire whenever I need to kind of top up my my health. Otherwise, I'm really kind of not touching it. It's kind of the way it goes. So that's kind of the brief overview of that. My basic rule of thumb is to kind of camp the short bow. I will go into the melee weapons occasionally when I need to, specifically in things where I'm out of cooldowns and really need to, you know, pull out a pretty large CC. With all that said, let's get into the CC here at this point. I think the CC being a pretty vital component of this build. If we put down the F2, we'll watch that, and we'll see that that pulses and just wrecks that break bar. That's out there in one power. Absolutely fantastic. So when we're talking about the short bow, our other options for CC is, as I mentioned before, we get a lot of slow off the 4, which is pretty powerful soft CC. We also get a whole bunch of hard CC off Scorch Razor. So with those options explained, let's go ahead here and just take a look at our other weapon set, where we will again get some CC off the 4 and the 5. The 5 being the big win for CC, so let's first just hit the 4 from distance. And because that's putting on chill, that is a fair bit of soft CC. Want to get rid of the rest of that? Let's just hit it with that there. Dump down my spirit, and there we go. Those are broken break bars, my friend. Quick and easy. Brought to you thanks of Condi Revenant. So that's it, you guys. Celestial Condi Shortbow Rev for open world, your weapon of choice when it comes to beating up large amounts of really powerful things. I am a really big fan of this build, of this class, obviously, as you've noticed on the channel. I will be replacing the old Trailblazers build with this one when it goes up, and hopefully you guys are going to get some use out of it. I'm a really big fan. I think it's fantastic. And they've had every chance to nerf it, and they haven't. If there's going to be a nerf, it's going to be to those Torment runes, and it'll be easy enough to fix. I wouldn't get too concerned about that. And that's really it, you guys. Again, I'm going to step back to what I started off this video with. I am going to wish you all a Merry Christmas. It's been uncharacteristically snowing out here on the West Coast. It is absolutely gorgeous. It is a bit of a winter wonderland, and just going to wish you and yours a happy one, and all the best in the new year. Last couple of years have been absolute shite, so let's make a better 2022. I am going to thank you all for making it through my video. I am going to remind you all to have fun in game and min-max your real life, and I'm glad we took this moment.